My story begins with my mom, sister, and I being evacuated by US Marines from war-torn Lebanon to Cyprus. I remember finding a cotton candy machine on the battleship we were on, and just for a fleeting moment, I could enjoy being a kid. Not a kid terrified of what he's just experienced, not a kid terrified of what lies ahead. After 5 long days, we finally arrived in the Seattle airport, and a strong smell of coffee welcomed us to our new home and our new way of life. Now, this might seem like a triumphant moment, that now we're saved, but it's not always that simple. As we made our way home, I remember a mix of emotion. We were joyful and relieved, but at the same time nervous. Are we going to be okay here? With sudden change comes sudden maturity. And even at a young age of 11 years old, I realized I had opportunities here in the United States I didn't have back in Lebanon. I was absolutely fascinated by the brain and mathematics, and I dreamt that one day I want to go to college and I want to become a neuroscientist, just like my hero, Oliver Sacks. As we settled into life in Seattle, everything seemed bright. But then one day, our foundation came crashing down. My dad had his second heart attack, but this time it was different. This time, he lost his job, medical bills piled up. We actually had to relocate from our home to government housing to afford rent. I felt as if the ground beneath us began to crumble. And I started asking myself, am I going to be okay? Will I still be able to attend college one day? I'm still going to become a neuroscientist, right? As the years passed by, my dream of attending college became more like a figment of my imagination. I started noticing a growing gap between myself and my friends. While they, during their summers, went to summer camps for robotics, coding, science, and sports, I stayed home. While they received new computers and video game consoles for their birthdays, I did not. While they started touring college campuses with their families and getting private tutors to help them with the SATs and personal statements, my family could barely afford a car to get around with. At this time, I was nearing the end of my high school years, and so I had to face my reality and make a decision. Is college still a possibility for me? Or should I pursue something more practical and get a job and support my family financially? And I had discussions with my family about college, and it was full of uncertainty. Questions like, even if I get into college, who's going to pay for it? What are these scholarships? And are they a scam? Why neuroscience? Maybe I could pick something easier. What if this whole college thing, this whole university, this whole academia science thing is just not made for families like us? A pivotal moment came when one of our family friends, Laura, who had known me since I was 2 years old and knew how bad I wanted to go to college, basically forced me to apply for a high school summer research internship at the University of Washington. I was so sure that I wouldn't get into the internship. Why pick me out of all the kids? But to my surprise, I got chosen. The feeling that somebody out there actually saw potential in me, even though at that time I didn't see potential in myself, is what inspired me to actually go to the internship. Now, on the end of the first day of my internship, I thought I had made a huge mistake. The kids around me, they were so smart, so confident. They already knew how to code. It's as if they've trained for this moment their whole life. I just didn't belong there. I should go back. On the second day of the internship, I learned I was placed in a lab that dealt with a left ventricular assist device, which is a system that you implant for heart failure patients. And in that moment, I really thought about my dad and his heart problems. And that intrigued me. What is this device? And how could I ever contribute to this device and to these people? And that's what pushed me to go in the third day. On the third day, I was given my first task, which is to code up a small piece of code to simulate the heat properties of one of the components that have to go inside the patient. And we have to make sure that it doesn't burn the tissue of the patient. I'm terrified. I've never coded before. I've never even opened a program before. Why did they pick me? Why not just another student who should do it? But at that moment, I had to stop and think, what if I don't take this opportunity? What would my life look like? What if I'm forever constrained by the financial circumstances that were handed down to me? But in that moment, I decided to take control. And it took me 2 weeks to create this little piece of code. But in those 2 weeks, I created that piece of code. And little did I know that this little piece of code would create the coil design for the component that selected out of many in the lab would end up being used for the first clinical trials the system underwent. And not only that, but it turned out later on that my coil design was as close to optimal as it could be. And this is the first time that I felt the ground solidify, and that the first step I took in this path wasn't muddy, that it didn't sink me and I didn't make a fool of myself, that actually this is a path that I can take and that I want to take. I could go back to my family and say that I have a contribution and impact to make in the world and that I can do it. And that college might just be the thing for me. Inspired, I applied and got into the University of Washington, took part of ever more computational pieces of work and research, anything from seizure predictions to models of visual cortex. And I'm proud to say that here at MIT, I've actually had the privilege of teaching programming and how to code to incoming graduate students in the department. And now, as part of the Jazayeri lab, I studied the computational basis of counterfactual thinking, the same sort of cognitive processes that went on in that pivotal moment when I thought, what if I take this opportunity, but what if I don't? And today I share my story for those of you out there who feel like me. And I want to tell you that you don't have to be constrained by the financial circumstances you were born in, that you can follow the passions of your heart. And the most important thing you have is not money or connections, but the belief people have in you and the belief that you have in yourself. And I'm here to say to you that I believe in you. Thank you.